Hello, welcome back to the barn. So over the last couple of videos I've been renovating the old rolling cart for the outdoor kitchen, and in doing so unboxing some of the tools that my friends from Banggood have been sending me. And today I'm going to start to make the doors and use this tool. I've had this box sat in my garage for about 6 weeks now and I'm really excited to see the contents of it. So let's take it over to the workbench and have a look, and then we'll get on with making the doors. So this is a coping sled for the router table, but before I do unbox it, this is my own coping sled that I made crudely from a few pieces of wood and a piece of used sandpaper, and I used this when I made the doors for the wardrobes. This is a very simple thing to make, but I am hoping that this is a lot more feature packed. Right, so let's open this box. Okay, well first of all we seem to have a box within a box. A little bit like pass the parcel. Okay, so first thing, open the box. There's a pack with some little screws in, a couple of plastic washers, split washers, and some Allen keys. Then we take the packing off and we've got a couple of pieces of pre-drilled MDF. Very shiny MDF, countersunk, 4 holes, maybe 4mm thick. Plastic guide. Some hold down clamps, 2 of those. 2 of these, which I'm guessing are going there. Well, they're really weighty. And then the main plate, which is heavy, 1,000,000 holes, a bar to run in a T-groove, more on that later. That's something I've been pondering before I've opened it. And then on the face there is these 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 45 degrees, 45 degrees stops. Some dims on here, which I do know work with these MDF boards. This is actually part of the Enjoy brand. Now I do have to say, it says Hooked on Wood here, which is another YouTube channel owned by a guy called Dennis. I think I should congratulate Dennis to get your YouTube channel to such a size that tool manufacturers are making things with your name on it. I think it's absolutely splendid, so congratulations Dennis. And Dennis does have a video about this product. And then that is it. That is the contents of the box. There is no instructions in this. So the first thing I need to consider to use this is actually how I'm going to use this bar. So I think I do have some T-track up here. This is a length of T-track that I took from my old outdoor workbench, and I actually made my own router coping jig for that workbench. I'll post a link at the end of this video should you want to have a look. So that is actually designed to sit in a T-track of that size, and it's nice and firm. What I don't really want to do at the moment is put that T-track in this router table. I want to keep the tracks I've got for the much larger table that I'll make for my 1/2" router, but also will make it so this Banggood router fence is transferable between the 2 router tables. For the sake of looking at it, if I did, it would probably need to go there, maybe. That's the centre of the cutter, so I actually go right on the front edge. And then these sacrificial boards are used in there. Now it does actually give me a little bit of an idea. I do have another one of these that also fits. I am wondering if I can make an extension that just goes on the table there, which would not only let me use that slide facility, but it'd actually also act as a little feature for this top as well, without having to chop anything into it. Then actually I can use this bar later. What I can do is remove this bar. Bo's having a whale of time with that cardboard box. Run that on the outside with this piece. actually countersunk on that end, so it sits over the top of them pins. That's very nicely done. If I remove my feather boards and that then runs down there. Just remove that bar off the bottom. Those little black split washers in that pack are actually replacements for those. So I could, for what I want to do with these doors, I'm going to router round about there. So that would work. I need to change the router cutter. Now they're 90 degrees. I'm going to be using some timber stock that looks very much like this. So I can place that on the 90-degree bend. I can run that against the fence. Do the 45-degree ones, I'd do it something like that. Let's then have a look at these clamps. So if I was going to use some timber there, ideally I'd like a sacrificial piece of timber behind this wood to stop breakout. We've got options there, got options there, options there. There's loads of options on this. You know, they countersunk on the back, they are them 2 holes there. So I could actually put a fence on there and fix through, and then these clamps here screw out on the bottom. Put one there for example, and then tighten that up with that, no, the bigger one. Flip that up to slacken it off, tighten that up, and then push that down. That's a good hold. So I think I've worked out how I'm going to use it to make these doors. So let's cut some material at the table saw, run it through the thickness planer, groove on the router, and then we can use the coping jig to cut the tenons on the end of the door stocks. Okay, so I've cut and planed to size my stock, and as per usual for these kind of doors, I'm using that really good quality parquet flooring. And whilst I was planing the timber down, I've also made a little makeshift bracket for the side of the saw workstation, so I can mount this T-bar, which means I can use this with the sliding attachment. Maybe that it's a little bit too far away from the cutter. It's given me a little bit of food for thought though for future expansion of this workstation, but for now I'm going to put my grooving bit into the router table and put grooves down the edges of these pieces of timber so I can put my plywood in for the panels. And then once we've done that, I'm going to set this router jig up so I can machine little stub tenons on the end to go into them grooves. Okay, so I need to now just put a sacrificial fence here so I can cut these tenons. Probably don't need this on, and I'm in some ways reluctant to use this for now because you only get a couple. Now it's easy to make more of these because you just cut some 4 or 5mm MDF, or actually you could probably cut some that's a little bit thicker and just put a rebate on with a router, and then it probably would just lip down. At least with putting this on and then running it through the router, you'd end up with like a 0 line, so you know where to position your cuts. But it's also what I'm planning to do with the sacrificial fence as well. That'll denote where my line is. So we're fastening it on. The good thing about this being shifted this way is that it won't take too much off, and I'll still be able to use it at a later date. Sorry about that, I just covered you in dust. I'm going to have a little bit of breakout on this back edge, which is why I'm going to put a little sacrificial fence in a minute. We'll just have a look at this, see if I can get it set up roughly about right. Then I'm going to have to cut the rails to length before I actually put the tenon on. And I'm going to try and do this 2 different ways. So I'm going to do it like I've got it set up here, and then I'm going to take the rail off and put this slider on and slide it against the fence. I don't really need to do that. I mean, I'm actually setting it up twice, but I just want to demonstrate both methods. I did actually take these off. I'll take them off later, but I took these 90 degrees and 45 degrees off, and they're actually recessed into the plate. So all these other holes here, which give you various configurations, are kind of not fixed positions, but these 4 here are fixed, and these pins actually locate into a little dimple in the base of the plate, which is a good idea. You know exactly that you're on that 90 degrees or 45 degrees line. Right, let's have a little cut. Let's put the extractor back on. Just need to put it up a little bit higher because I'm just trying to sneak up on these lines here. Okay, just turn that off a minute. This is style on that, so I've just allowed a little bit of breakout there, which I knew would do because we've not got a sacrificial fence on, but I think that I'm okay with. So that's okay. So I just need to set a stop from the fence to allow the stub tenon to be the right length. Right, so I just need to cut my stock to length now, or my rails to length. And allow for that 10mm, I think, depth. Yeah, 10mm depth for the grooves. Okay, so that's the routing done with this jig for these doors, and I've done it both ways. One door referencing off this T-bar guide and the other one using this Perspex guide and referencing off the fence. There's really not that much in it. It's probably easier to set it up from the fence, but you do obviously have to move the fence to create the depth of cut. The only downside with doing that is you've got to make sure when you put your stock in that the jig is hard up against the fence, and also when you're pushing it through that you keep it hard up against the fence, because if you just move it out slightly then your shoulder of the tenon is going to be a little bit skew with. Whereas if you do it on this, then the setup's probably a little bit more complicated, only a fraction more complicated, but you've got a much more consistent back and forth movement. I think in essence I'd prefer to do it off this, but of course you've got to make sure you've got this in your router table, and I had to make a makeshift one. But it's certainly going forward for my rest of my workshop build, I'll make sure I incorporate one of these into my other router tables. It's important you have a sacrificial piece in the end though, so you don't blow out the back of your piece. And actually, the first time I actually screwed this through the base of the jig, which you can obviously do to keep it in place, but actually with having two clamps, you can use the rear clamp to clamp down this sacrificial piece and then the front clamp to clamp down your piece. And I have to say these clamps have got really good holding power. You can't actually budge the piece once it's on there. So just to finish this video, I'm going to use this in my saw. So when I first got this the other day, I posted some images to my patrons and my YouTube members, and one of the questions I got was, does it work in the saw table, or can it work in the saw table? And I'm absolutely certain it will, but let's just have a little play with it in there, and then after that I need to just finish and glue up these doors ready for next week's video. But let's have a play with this in the saw. So I'm just going to strip the router fence off and put the guide back on the bottom. So this sliding bar does fit in the saw groove, and it's a really good fit as well actually. I need to take this off. The bars there, drop these through these holes there and there. Now if I put that zero insert back in, the one that I'd cut, I'm hoping, yeah, that's actually just... So put these back in with these little screws. As I said, we can mass produce these little boards. I'll crown guard off so you can see what the saw's cutting. As you know, I'm quite a fan of crown guards, but for this experiment, so you can see. Put that in there. Lower the blade down. So I now have a zero cut against the blade. So I could, for example, just put my piece of timber on, line the blade up, and then just make a cross cut. Because we've got these 45mm diagonals on, I could actually put that across there. Wind that fence out of the way. So that's cut nice. Now one advantage of having this setup over, say, a zero insert plate in the saw is you can put the blade over to an angle. So let's just pick a random angle. There we go, lock the saw off. Make a cut against that like that, and then you could put this back in here, just using these 45-degree guides again, put that on, and you can make a compound cut against this, and you've got something to reference on to put your timber against. Now you wouldn't want to do that on a zero insert plate, because once you've done that you've kind of ruined your zero in plate. Now here, obviously, this is now only suitable for this, unless I want to kick the blade over onto a more acute angle. But because it's just a piece of MDF, you can just make another piece and have it suited. So you could have an whole series of these for different uses. And of course, the other thing you could do with this, I will just remove that one and this out. There we go. And that's what I alluded to earlier for the 1945 degree stops. They're actually recessed into the base plate, so you know you're going to get it 100% correct every time. And of course, you've got all these other holes in there, so you could use this to, let me just get another better scrap piece of wood. There we go. So you could, using these holes, create a jig and screw some guides down onto the face of the... So you could screw some pieces of timber down onto the face of this plate to make sure you have that same geometry every time. And then cut a relatively complex shape like that. So that's absolutely possible to do that with this jig. And actually, I think that's something that's probably not alluded to in the instructions. For small pieces, this is a very versatile little jig, and I like it. Yeah, that's a bit skew with. Right, okay guys, so that's the jig part of this video finished here. Really like that jig. I think it's really versatile. I'll put the link in the description to this if you want to look at it in greater detail. And now I need to cut some panels for this door and glue them up.